I'm Gretchen,
I'm Corey.
and we are Two Girls and Jesus. We are here for one more week of digging into relationships with y'all. Corey, how did these verses do you this week?
They're all kind of tying in and starting to make sense with some of what was said in the past,
Yeah.
or in the previous versions that we were going over. Um, so some of what I'm saying, I feel like I may have already said in some of
Yeah,
our other recordings, but I'm gonna say it again if it's what I feel like saying.
that's right. That's right. So, our first verse, I'm going to let you take this one because we know I'm super jaded in this area. Um, so you go ahead with our first one.
All right, the first one is Colossians chapter 3, verse 19. And I use the NIV version, which says, Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. So the reason I think I'm going to repeat some of what I've already said is just last week we did Ephesians 5:33, which was, however, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. So different books, kind of touching on the same subject, right?
Right.
Um, and I'm going to say probably the same thing I said last week. I don't remember exactly what I said, but respect is huge in a marriage. And if a husband is, I mean, when I hear the word harsh, I'm like, is that just yelling, being short-tempered, um, maybe expecting too much with all the other things that she has to do? Or, what does harsh mean? Hopefully it doesn't mean beating, but yeah, don't do that either.
Right.
Um, so that's why I think it's just showing respect everyone in the family. I know I said that last week is that all parts of the family need to respect each other. But if our children and the people around us seeing us being respectful to one another, then they're going to think one way of us. If they see us being harsh and short and angry and bitter, they're going to have a whole different feeling of us.
Trigger warning: the following segment contains discussions of domestic violence which may be distressing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Our goal is to raise awareness and provide support for those affected. If you or someone you know needs help, resources are available in the description. To skip this segment, fast forward to 319.
Um, and you should treat someone outside of the home the same way you treat them inside the home.
Yes,
So,
very much so.
as how many times do we hear of a couple where, and I've actually heard of this with men and women, where they were being beaten at home behind closed doors, and they always wore something covering themselves up, and they never spoke of it, and they always put on a pretty face. Nobody knew the harshness of the reality of their life because they didn't share it. So, respect all the way around.
Yeah. I use the NLT, of course, and I think it says this, I think it uses the same words. It says, husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. I also did the easy and CEV. Easy says, husbands, love your wives, do not bring trouble to them. And CEV, a husband must love his wife and not abuse her. So all of those things that you were saying,
Yeah.
um, harsh, I think just kind of, capsules all of those different things.
Yeah.
Um, but the first thing I wrote down was, why was verse 18 left out? Like, I don't understand that. But verse 18 says, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting for those who belong to the Lord. The CEV says a wife must put her husband first. This is her duty as a follower of the Lord. The easy says, wives, obey your husbands. That is the right thing to do because you belong to the Lord. And I know that I said this last week, but in our culture, we marry because of love, and you and I agreed on this last week that you don't get respect without love. You don't get one without the other. But I'm gonna, just say it again that in these times and in this culture, men did have to be reminded to be nice because they didn't know this woman. They didn't know her.
Right.
And women had to be reminded, respect this man, submit to him as unto God, because she didn't know him.
Right.
So, um, and it's not just that that they they have to love their wives, they should love their wives, you know. She's bearing their children, their heirs, you should love them, right? But
Uh,
I also thought it was really important to go through God's family pyramid here. Um, when you think of a pyramid, think of the food pyramid, right? But this is God's pyramid for family. So at the very top is, of course, God. The very tip of our pyramid is God. The husband comes second, then the wife, then the children, then yourself, then church, work, family, others, and then your hobbies come last. Um, if we are not showing love and respect and honor in that order, okay, especially when we talk about as women, when we talk about having to divide our time between work, the house, the animals, the children, the husband, cooking dinner, taking care of everything that's got to be taken care of, getting the kids where they need to be. you know our husbands are usually last on the list that get a piece of our time throughout a day, right? They just usually are, because they can take care of themselves. The children can't. But that is just not the way it should be. And if it is that way, there is chaos within the family. Um, the family may not recognize it as chaos because that's normal to them. Okay. But there's chaos, and God is a God of peace. He's not going to dwell there if there's chaos, right? Um, Children do not come before your spouse. They don't come before the wife. They don't come before the husband. They certainly don't come before God. Um,
Okay, I'm going to interject.
okay, go ahead.
I would fail the test 100 times about if your husband and child were drowning and you could only save one, which one would you save? I would save my child because that grown man should be able to take care of himself and it's my child. And the reasoning that I was given when I found out that I failed that, not by my husband, by somebody telling me the thing, was that you can have more children. Well, no, I can't. I'm all done. No more kids for me. And it's my child that I held inside of my body before I held inside of my arms. And I'm not gonna pass their future lives that they're just beginning. Even if they're teenagers, even if they're in their 20s, my husband has lived how long? They're just beginning their purpose in this life. Not
Yeah,
gonna do it.
I think everybody would feel that way. And if you think about it, your husband should be telling you, get the babies, get the kids first, then get me. You
Well,
know?
that's what I'm saying with I'm not always gonna put my husband ahead of my kids. It's who has the need. And I'm not going to, well, I shouldn't say that because I did. There were times where you're tired or whatever, and you're not doing all the things in a marriage that is, doting on your husband and loving on your husband because you're exhausted, because you did put the kids first, because the two of you decided to bring them into this world, and now it's our job to take care of them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think, I think as kids grow and they get more independent and they mature, I think, when the kids are really little, mom is like the center of their world,
Mhm.
you know?
Until
Um,
dad walks in the door, and then dad's the center of their world.
but see, it was never that way in my house. I was the center of my kid's world. And now when he was an infant, baby, toddler, when he started getting a little older, he would depend on, you know, his stepdad some then. Um, he and the older he got, the more, unfortunately his dad just chose not to be a huge part of his life. But my ex-husband was a big part of his life, and he, they loved one another dearly. But, the older Luke got, the more he would let David do for him. You know, um, his dependence on me was a lot less. And that's just because mamas are the nurturers, you know. Um, I think I think it's in context of like this. Um, everyday life is messy, right? Families are hectic because there's so much that we allow our kids to do. Okay. And I'm just using this as an example. If you've got, let's just say you've got two or three kids and they're all wanting to play two or three different sports, somebody's got to pay for that, you know? And let's just say mom's stay at home mom. Okay. And dad's the only one in the house that works. We've got two or three kids playing two or three different sports. And, dad's not telling anybody not to do anything, but he's saying this is getting expensive because it takes the shoes and the clothes and the equipment and the travel, getting them and the eating out when we're at games or whatever. It's kind of getting expensive. And so I think mom at that point, okay, when these seasons end, we're going to cut back at least on one sport, give dad a break on the money. Do you know what I mean? I I I do think that we can take things way too literally sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, there are certain things with your kids that nobody will ever come before your kid, and there are certain things with your husband that nobody will ever come before your husband, and there are certain things with your family, your siblings, your parents, that nobody else is going to come before that. Your mom's, I can't imagine ever being there, but let's just, my mom's on her deathbed, but my kid wants me to go to Walmart with him. Guess where I'm going?
Mhm.
My kid's going to take the back burner there, you know? Um, but, you know, your job should never come before your kids or your spouse or God. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care that you are the only income for the household. That job is not as important as your wife and kids, husband, your kids, and God. Um, and hobbies, I see so many people, and I know them. They're people. I wouldn't really call them friends, but I know them. I know enough about their lives to know that they put the things that they like to do above the needs of their children and their spouse. You know, I think you see this typically more with men than you do women. Like working on a hot rod or going to ride motorcycles. I'm sorry, I've got two sick kids. Stay your tail at home. You know, I need some help. I need a break. You know, I think it's more stuff like that. If I was going to explain this to somebody, that's the kind of things that I think it would be more closely related to. Does that make sense?
Little. I don't know. Every family is so different. And I know some very selfish women. So, I mean, I see it on all sides to where people don't always have their priorities lined up the way that I think they should be. But
Right.
maybe it works for their family. I don't know.
Yeah, and hopefully it's functional. Hopefully it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our next verse, I've been so excited to get to this one, is Colossians 3:23. And I use the NLT, and it says, "Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people." And I was just so happy that work relationships were included because they are such, especially if you work outside of the home, they are a huge part of your life. And the people that you work with are very influential in your life. Because if you've got a bad coworker, they can turn a day
Mhm.
upside down in a heartbeat. Because I know I used to have one, you know. Um, But this verse reminded me of that quote from Martin Luther King Jr. It says, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. I think the world would be an entirely different place if everybody lived or worked with that attitude,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and you know, in the context of work is one of those places I have to remind myself all the time that this person may not deserve the best for me, but God always deserves my best. So whether that person deserves it or not, I am going to do it. I mean, God gave me this job. He enabled me to be able to do this job. I'm gonna, yeah, somebody else signs my paycheck, but this God provides this money for me. I'm gonna do it to the best of my ability. I'm gonna do it for His glory, and you don't see that a lot in people these days.
Because most people are working for the paycheck because either they never took the time to figure out what they really love and enjoy doing, or they just feel like there's no other way. You work, that's what you do. And I mean, I think I was 14 when I got my first job.
I was 14, yeah.
And that was for whatever extras I wanted. I think I started paying for my car insurance and yeah, a couple of years later. And it was just in me that you work. It wasn't necessarily what do you want to do? So at I don't know, probably when I was around 40 and just feeling less fulfilled in my job. I think I had a conversation with both of my girls, and I said I should have been a pharmacist. I loved when I was a pharmacy tech, and I just the counting of the pills and the methodicalness of it. But that was my teenage job, and I just grew up and moved on and got an adult job without college. And took it as, well, I'm great at this. So I'm just going to keep doing sales. I'm great at it. I'm great at it, even though it was draining and draining. I made it my own to where now I can actually enjoy doing it. But if you don't love what you're doing, it really is a job.
You're absolutely right.
If you can just take the time to figure out, and nobody really, I don't think that was discussed with me. And that's why I think, yes, college is for some people to go find their path. Other people, they try a trade and they love that trade and that, they love it, they enjoy it. They're happy to go do it every day. So there's a different path for everyone, but trying to find that path. And Kayla asked me just a couple of years ago, Mom, why don't you just go to pharmacy school? And I was like, are you kidding me? Now? I'm not going back to school now. There's not a fast track to be a pharmacist. It's
Right.
going to take forever. No, I'll be old. She's like, you should do it. I'm not doing it.
Well,
But
I will say it's never too late.
yeah,
It is never too late. And I think it's very unfair to ask 17 and 18-year-olds to make a decision what they want to do for the rest of their life at 17 or 18.
yeah. Well, that's why a lot of people change their mind 3, 4 times in college, and they become those lifers in college because they're bored with what they thought they wanted to do, and so they're not putting their best into it. And then they have to add something else on because they change, and some of those classes don't count anymore. And it's just maybe that whole leap year thing is something everybody should do. Go find yourself, but everybody can't afford that. I mean, it's not logical.
Right. And
to do that,
hence,
but
this is why we've got 30-year-olds still in college.
well, and here's the thing: we don't listen to God anymore.
Right.
I shouldn't say anymore. They probably didn't listen to him then either. They
They
probably
probably
still
never
up on their
even
own.
asked.
They
They
just
probably
didn't
never even
have.
asked.
Well, they didn't have as many things pulling them this way and that way. I mean, think about the things that you could do in biblical times. There weren't all of the things that you can do now. This world has grown into so many things. So maybe it was easier for them then to, well, I'm going to be a farmer. My daddy was a farmer. My grandfather was a farmer. I'm going to be a farmer. You know?
Yeah.
And some of them probably loved it and some of them probably couldn't stand it, but they did it because that's what they were told they were supposed to do. But were they listening to God or were they listening to their parents? Who were they listening to? Because they probably weren't listening to their own thoughts. It's everything else that's coming into us. So try to sit peacefully, calmly. And I love when my kids tell me that they're going to pray about something,
Yeah.
whether it's about work, which school they should go to, any of those things. I just love it because I'm like, I didn't have that at their age. And at least they feel like, okay, even if it's just them sitting with their own thoughts, having that conversation with God, they're taking the time to think about it. And that's what God wants from us, right? He wants us to sit in his presence.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But, you know, the way, things have changed, I would say in, the past 10 to maybe 10, 15 years, um, it has enabled kids coming out of high school to stay in college until they're 30, 32 years old. Um, with kids being able to stay on their parents' insurance until like they're 27 now.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as my kid has a job that offers insurance, he's coming off mine. He's coming off of it. He has been paying his own car insurance or truck insurance since he was 15 years old. I got him his truck when he turned 15. He started working when he turned 15. At 16, when he started driving, that was when he started paying the insurance. But he was paying the insurance on it before he could ever drive it.
Yeah.
Because the way I looked at it, that truck was a privilege.
No.
And if you mess it up, guess what? You ain't gonna have it no more. When he got his cell phone, he was very young when I got him a cell phone because we didn't have a house phone. But you mess up and guess what? You're not having a cell phone. You're just not.
Yeah.
You don't see parents doing that a lot these days. So it enables kids to, I'm sorry, be lazy. It just does. Anyway, rabbit hole rant. What did you have for this verse, Corey?
Oh, I already talked about it. I just
Wait, you
I didn't
didn't-
I
did you
didn't
read-
I didn't read the verse off because it was very similar, but we started
Okay.
talking about it, so I just said it.
Okay.
But I mean, it's fine. It said almost the same thing. It said not for human masters at the end.
Not for what?
Not, it says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
All right. Do you have anything else for this?
just try to be pleasing to God, not pleasing to people.
Right.
And I mean, I am definitely guilty of being a people pleaser. And so it just reminded me to look inside myself. Is this pleasing to me? Is this pleasing to God? Not, is this pleasing to me? Is this pleasing to these people?
Yeah.
But is it what makes God happy?
Yeah. And I mean, just if you're gonna sweep streets or clean toilets, you know, do that as if you're cleaning that toilet or sweeping that street for God.
Have you ever driven through a town? I know you have. I know you have. There's a town here. I'm at my mom's. This is a real background behind me. You say you can't hear the birds. They are so loud. The neighbor's over there whistling. I think he's whistling, "We wish you a happy Christmas" or "Merry Christmas." But I'm like, la 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 la, can't hear that. I'm only hearing you. Distractions. But there's a town, little town that you've got all your elitists over here, you've got your normals over here, and you've got, just different levels of people. Go drive through the least expensive area, especially this time of year. They're sitting on the porch because it's hotter inside.
Mhm.
They're maybe snapping peas. Kids are running around playing. and everybody's happy. They have such a simple life that they're so happy with these basic things, and we all make it this giant thing. We have to have this and this and this and this, and make sure you go over there and do your hair this way. Oh my gosh, have you been to the boutique? Have you tried this out? Have you tried that out? And they're just snapping peas and content.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want for my life. Contentment.
Yeah.
So that's all. I think that pleases God.
Yeah, it does. It does.
All right. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving to you. I thought a lot about what this was saying and, how that affects your mom. Yeah, you have the respect that you have, that your family has, right? You want to protect how people perceive not only you, but your entire family because you have this family name, right? Legacy. You want to leave a good legacy behind. And that starts with how your parents raise you, how you then raise your children, so on and so forth. And in biblical times, you were given or had things taken away based on what was pleasing to God or not. So if you wanted to keep all of your land or receive more land, same with animals, same with crops, fields, pastures, anything, any of it, that was based on how your family from the top to the bottom behaved. And I feel like if you weren't doing the things that you were supposed to be doing for your family, that maybe those things would no longer be there for you once your family passed. Sorry, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I 100% agree with that. Because long life here, full life, long life, whatever your version says, is not talking about the length of your life. Is talking generation to generation to generation to generation.
Yeah.
And if you can't honor your very own mother and father, okay, how can you, number one, how can you even honor God? If you can't honor them, how can you honor God? If you can't honor them, how are you going to honor the cattle? Because they've got to be taken care of. They've got to be fed. If you can't honor your parents, how are you going to honor that garden? Because it has to be weeded. You have to keep infestations out of it. You have to go out there and pick it or else it rots, right? Exactly what you said. If you don't do that, then the generations and the generations, it doesn't keep going. There will be an end point to it.
Yeah.
And what this verse is saying is, honor your father and your mother, and you'll live a long, full life in the land that the Lord gave you, which was the land flowing with milk and honey, right? That is the fifth commandment, honor your mother and father. But it's the first commandment that came with a promise. You honor them long, full life, right? And I just wrote down some ways that how we could honor our parents. Of course, obeying them, caring for them, loving them, helping them, respecting them, spending time with them, especially when we're adult children, spending time with their parents cherish that, you know. Checking in with them, even as adults. My mom and I, if she's going somewhere and she knows I might not be able to get her on the phone, she lets me know. And I'm the same. If I'm going out of town or I'm going somewhere, I'm not asking her permission. I'm just letting her know I'm not going to be at home. You know? And then, as they start aging, and getting older, loving them even when it's difficult, when they're difficult. Because
Yeah.
I don't know about your mom, but my mama is getting ornery. Like, I love her, and but I'm gonna end up having to throw hands because she won't stop staring at people, Corey. Like, we go anywhere, we're sitting at a restaurant, and somebody's saying something or looks away that she doesn't like, or even if she does like it, there's no judgment in her look because I know her. She's gonna stare at them if she does or does not like the way they look, what they have on, their shoes, you know. She's gonna stare either way. So her staring is not judgment, but other people don't know that. And I mean, she's gonna cause me to get in a fight.
Yeah.
She really is. And I keep telling her,
You just have to tell people. You just have to tell
I
people,
mean,
I'm sorry. Just don't worry about her. You know she's on her meds. Don't worry about her. But
well,
Jack,
that's fine if they give us a second,
right.
but if
Yeah.
they snap at her and they're ugly at her, they're gonna get gangsta me. That's just how it is. Um, so that's what I'm dealing with, but I'm trying to still be respectful. I'm trying not to say, stop staring like I would a 2-year-old, you know? I'm trying to still be respectful, but I find it hard sometimes. I really, really do.
Yeah.
I want to pop her on the hand.
Well, a worse thing is I have, it's so strange to me. I have several friends whose parents are dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's, a combination, chemo brain, like, so many things. Um, sorry. Um, and that's hard, man. It's so hard. I watched my builder go through it with his mom 15 years ago, and I couldn't fathom it then. And my stepsisters, their mom went through it, and they tried as long as they could, to be her caregivers. I have friends right now who they are trying to be respectful of one parent that's trying to help the parent who's going through it. And it just becomes too much at one point, and you don't want to give up on your spouse. You don't want to give up on your parents, but I hope that people understand that at a certain level, it is better for them. It is more honorable for them to be somewhere that they have 24/7 care.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, they escape, they go down running down the road, and you can't find them. There was somebody out on the Cape last year who just got lost. They forgot where they were, and they had this huge search party. You don't want that to be your mom or your dad. So just honor them in that way of saying, hey, we're here to help, and hurt feelings and everything. It's hard. I know how hard it was. My stepsisters talked to my mom a lot about it, and it's very difficult for them, but ultimately it was the right thing to do, the honorable thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, rabbit hole.
We're doing good going down the rabbit
Yes.
holes today.
We should do a whole podcast on our rabbit holes.
Yes.
Let's start highlighting anytime we go
Yeah.
down a rabbit hole. Let's just highlight it in a certain color.
Yeah.
And well, one day we'll just go, here's this rabbit hole. Guess how we got here?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that would be hilarious. I will say that it is a lot easier now to honor my parents than it was when I was younger.
Oh, yeah. Because you get it now. Parents aren't perfect either. And
Right.
everyone on this
But
earth deserves grace.
yes, but Corey, we were so rebellious. You know, we were rebellious.
I was pretty good. I don't know. Just talking about.
This is a Christian podcast. Don't tell stories.
I really did not get in trouble often.
You just didn't get caught.
I'm not speaking on
We
that.
were rebellious. We were very rebellious. We're just not going to talk
I
about
think we
all
were
the things.
pretty good kids. I think I knew a lot of people doing a lot worse than me. So I feel like I was a pretty good kid.
Yeah. I definitely get as a parent now, I definitely get why they made some of the decisions that they made. It doesn't mean I agree with it still, but I get why those decisions were made.
Yeah.
One thing, of course, it was a whole different time back then. So this would have been 1976. Okay.
Wow.
I was 3 years old and being put on an airplane to fly across the country by myself. Now, 76, that was a whole different time period,
Yeah. People
right?
were smoking on the plane and everything.
Exactly. You know, um, I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah.
I don't care if the stewardess is there. They are sitting me right there by the door, right where the stewardess can keep an eye on me the whole time. I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
not putting my 3-year-old on a plane by himself. I am not doing that.
Yeah.
I would, and I'm not saying that parents who do it are bad parents. I am not saying that. I'm just saying that I would not do it. You've not lost your mind. You done tipped over your cornflakes because that ain't happening, Captain. I will never understand why my parents did that. I'll never understand it. My childhood was very traumatizing for many, many, many different reasons. But I held that against my parents for a long, long time. Um, I wasn't withholding forgiveness from them per
Mhm.
se, but I just didn't. I could not comprehend why they did some of the things that they did. And I know now they only had two choices, and both options were not good.
Yeah.
You know, they made the best decision with the things that they had in front of them that they had to choose from.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, some of those decisions traumatized me. And it would be so easy for me to have an angry disposition with both of my parents. It would be very easy for me to be, um, I don't talk to my parents all the time. And we live right here. We all live right here.
Mhm.
I don't talk to them all the time, don't see them all the time. Um, but I think that has a lot to do with the way I was raised, you know?
Mhm.
But there was nothing I wouldn't do for them. There's not one time they could call me and I'd say, no, I'm not doing that today. No, I'm not doing that because you put me on that plane when I was 3 years old by myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I found myself, um, I don't know if this is a story for today or not. Well, funny thing is my mom and I, because I'm here at my mom's and we had lunch together today, and she was saying something about, yeah, I wasn't a very good parent. Like and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know. I thought my parents, she was room mom, she did all the stuff, we did cheerleading, gymnastics, ballet, all of it. Um, we had fun stuff that we did. My grandma lived in Orlando. We went to Disney multiple times. Had no idea that we weren't well off. We were what would be considered poor, but because we had those extras in our lives that they made sure that they gave us, we had no idea. And probably everyone around us was the same, right? But my parents split, stayed with mom, dad every weekend. Um, then my mom moved us and she didn't know everybody anymore. And so I couldn't go out. I couldn't go spend the night with my friends. This is what I was, very rebellious. Couldn't go spend the night with my friends. So I just took the phone off the hook and went out with my friends. Mom's calling, dun, 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 whatever the noise was. So she knew it was off the hook. Comes looking for me. I'm not there. I'm also not spending the night with friends. I'm out, not being good. And she came home and um, I guess when I got home, I don't even remember how it worked out that we were both home in the same place and had an argument. And I was like, well, you're never going to know any of my friends because you always work because she worked at night.
Mhm.
And at that point, I was like, fine, I'll go live with dad. Probably crushed her soul, right? I mean, as a mama, if your kid says, I'm going to go live with the other one, you know?
Yeah.
Um, But turns out it was the best thing for our relationship because I lived with my dad, and then my dad got married. But well, they got married afterwards. But anyway, he had a girlfriend that lived there and became his wife later. She had 2 kids, and anyway, long story short, maybe 2.5 years into that, um, had an argument there, and I was just going to live with whoever. I didn't care. I was going to be graduated soon. I don't need y'all. And my mom said, "Come here so you will finish school."
Mhm.
And that was the best thing because I had already been going and like seeing her at her daytime job. And so we were rebuilding that relationship. And then she got to know all of my friends and built a more adult relationship. Now my friends love her like more than they love me. What's your mom doing?
Yeah.
So I don't, even though she thinks she did so much wrong, my dad may think he did so much wrong. It's like you, I mean, they did the best they could with what they had and the tools that they knew what to do. Like, I don't really know how my dad grew up, but I know how my mom grew up. And her mom loved her, provided for her, but her mom didn't really know how to be a mom to her. So, in my eyes, she did way better, right?
Yeah.
And I hope I'm doing better, and I hope that they do better.
Yeah.
How do we get there? Gosh,
I
stop it.
don't know. I said that to my mom one time. I can't remember how old I was. I must have been like fifth or sixth grade, I think. And we were living in Texas. I think it was Texas. And my mom was wanting me to clean my room, and I'm looking at my room and I'm like, it ain't dirty. Like, what's wrong with it? I mean, there was stuff out, but I mean, to me, it just looked lived in, you know? Um, and she was like, if you don't go in there and clean that room, I'm throwing everything away. And I said, fine, I'll just go live with my dad and I will never come back. And Gen X here, they grab whatever is in within reach and different distance and just start swinging. And she got a hold of me with a belt that had holes in it.
Oh,
It had like cutouts in it.
mhm.
Yeah, she branded me.
Um,
I,
my mom would say, "You want the belt or my hand?" I was like, "The belt." Your hand's gonna hurt worse than the belt. And it's
yeah,
not like I got spankings all the time, but it was a different time. And
yeah,
you did something ugly, you did something wrong. You know, I still a teacher. I don't know.
yeah.
You were,
I used to get chased around the yard with a switch. My grandparents, they didn't use a belt, they used a switch.
yeah. I never had the switch. Maybe they didn't have switches up north. I don't know. My mom never used a switch.
I still to this day have a scar on my leg from getting spanked with a switch. Crazy.
Kids these days have it so good.
That they're not held accountable. If I was disrespectful, I got hit. Guess what? I'm not a disrespectful person. These kids these days, they'll talk to anybody any old way. They don't care because there's no consequence for it. And I know because I teach them. I try to teach them. Anyway, we got one more verse.
Now, any more rabbits? Any more holes?
No more rabbit holes so far.
All right, let's
So,
get through this. Let's get through this last
okay.
one.
The last one, Proverbs 18:24. There are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. I looked up several different versions. Did you? Okay.
I went with NIV and I'll get it out of the way.
Okay.
One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
Mm-hmm.
So similar, but I like that unreliable friends.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why I stopped. That's why I stopped. I looked at the others, but I stopped writing after I read that one. I read
Yeah.
that one.
The easy version, a man with many friends may lose them, that there is a friend who is more faithful than a brother. CEV. Some friends don't help, but a true friend is closer than your own family. The new messianic version, a man that has friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Um, I kind of felt like this verse was kind of all over the place. In the NLT, I thought this was interesting though. In the NLT version, friends was in quotation marks.
Hmm. It made me think back to one, and I'm pretty sure it was in this study. I didn't go all the way back to make sure, but Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." So, when I was saying that, I felt like some of these verses were tying into some of the others. This was one that did that. Actually, there were two this week, that did that. And I like I like the study coming together that way to where you're seeing it in two different contexts, but you can put it together and it just makes sense. Makes sense separate, but then when you put it together, it makes even more sense.
Right. Yeah. This just made me think of quality over quantity,
Yeah.
you know,
And we get that
superficial,
now.
huh?
We get that now, but there was a time where
Oh,
you
for
thought you had to
sure.
have all the friends. I think
Exactly.
about kindergarten. That
Oh,
girl
yeah.
doesn't like me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I am so glad that we didn't have social media when we were growing up. I am so glad. First of all, none of the crazy stuff you and I ever did was on video, because we didn't even have cell phones back then. We had pagers.
Well,
They
and
didn't have cameras.
our families also didn't have like excess recording
No,
tapes that we could put into a camcorder if we happen to have
right.
one, which we didn't.
No, we
So
didn't.
yeah, there's nothing out there.
Yeah, nothing out there.
Somebody's gonna
But
find it.
I, I hear people all the time talking about, oh, my friend. Well, how do you know so and so? I know so and so. How do you know so and so? Oh, I've never met so and so. Then how are they your friend?
Yeah, Facebook friends. Cool.
Yes, social media friends. Those are superficial friends. Now, I have met some people through social media that I do now call friends.
Hmm.
But that has been after years and years of seeing the stuff that they post and us commenting, talking back and forth, then private messaging, and then finally graduating, to personal contacts. And, you know, I still haven't met that person because they live in Kalamazoo, but I still call that person my friend, but the person's friend request that I accepted 2 weeks ago, that's not my friend.
Hmm.
I have very few friends. I have two friends here. Okay. And then I have you, our friend group.
Yeah.
So and that's really all I call friends.
Yeah, I think as I got older, I
Yeah.
started realizing that I had to refer to some people as an acquaintance because as you get older, you really do start to understand the difference between these unreliable, chaotic people in your life who aren't going to be there for you for anything, may expect you to be there for everything.
Hmm.
Um, but ultimately, they're just someone you know. They're not your friend.
Right. A true friend, a loyal, authentic friends are loyal and immovable. They're immovable. So you and I could go 6 months without talking, but as soon as we talk, we pick right back up where we left off. We
Mhm.
don't go 6 months. We used to go 6 months or more without talking, but we don't anymore, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but they're just immovable no matter what I do. They're they're going to be right there cheering me on. All of you all are.
And they're also going to have your back whether you're there or not. If they hear somebody speak poorly of you, they're going to stand up for you.
Yep.
They're not going to allow that to go down.
Right.
They're going to right it. They're going to make that right. They're going
You're
to make sure
absolutely
that
correct.
person takes back what they said or proves otherwise. They're not going to be disrespectful to you. And I think that's where that end comes in, where it says that friend sticks closer to you than a brother. They're using the word brother, but family.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I kind of feel like they're talking about Jesus there. That is just the way I feel about it. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong. I feel like that's talking about Jesus. Um,
Because he stands by you no matter what your rights, wrongs.
yeah, I mean, there is nothing that'll put a wedge between me and Jesus. Nothing.
Yeah.
So that was just my thoughts.
No rabbit holes, huh?
No rabbit holes here. Well, that's pretty
Pretty straight.
straightforward. It's
Yeah, we
pretty
know who our
close to the
friends are.
one. Yeah, we know exactly who our friends are.
Now, if you ask a 15-year-old girl this, have this conversation, it's going to go a whole different way.
I mean,
It would have for us.
even a 20
Yeah.
something year old girl.
Yeah.
So for you teenagers and you 20 somethings out there, it is quality over quantity. If they would not have your back at your lowest, or if you're not even there, okay, they're not authentic. And so they're not going to be loyal and they're not going to be immovable.
And it's not the end of the world if they're not your friend.
It is not. It surely is not. I would rather have one good friend than a host of bad ones, a legion of bad ones. One good one versus 10,000 bad ones.
That's a great note to end on.
Yeah. Look at me, all philosophical today. All
Well,
right.
hey, next week is our last week.
Yeah.
On this specific relationships. And we've got some great stuff that we're working towards for the next time that we start something. I don't know what we're going to call it, but we'll figure that out.
I hope you all, thank you for joining us. Please, y'all, I cannot stress how important it is to subscribe, share, like, ring bells, squeeze lemons, mash the hearts, share the thread. What else do people do? I'm missing some. What do they do on Instagram? They heart it, share it, interact on Facebook, share
Follow
the
us.
reels.
Follow us so you don't miss anything funny because I knows we're funny.
You got that right. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the stuff. We've got some pretty cool stuff in the works for you guys. Like Corey said, next week is our last 4 verses for relationships. And I'm just gonna be real honest with y'all. I'm ready to be out of these because I've had to dig a little deep and go some places that I didn't like to go.
Yeah, and I might just take out the first verse of next week because I don't like it. So we'll
What
see.
is that?
Next week might only be 3.
Oh no, we're so going there. We're just gonna need we're gonna need a disclaimer.
Okay.
Yeah. Just gonna need a disclaimer. All right. So you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you for liking and sharing and subscribing. Thank you already for what you do. And you guys are great. Have a great week.
Bye, guys.